I don't have time to develop this, but in a balanced biblical teaching, you have to teach people about simple thought control. How many of you have ever had a thought that you didn't particularly like? And how many of you have ever had difficulty reeling in your thoughts? My feeling is a perfectly healthy, Jesus-loving Christian would be one who was full of 9 things: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faith, meekness, and self-control. Wouldn't you love to be married to a person just like that? Full of the fruits of the Spirit. But you know, all of us have tempting thoughts. And instead of a loving thought, we have a resentful thought. Instead of a joyful thought, we have a depressing thought. Instead of a peaceful thought, an anxious thought. And you know, in families, when you get to know like a son or a daughter, and then you get to know parents and grandparents, sometimes you notice, you know, that family, they're good people, but man, they're just so harsh. Instead of being kind, they're harsh. And then you begin to investigate that family and you say, you know, not only is there kindness and harshness, but when no one's looking, there's a stronghold of rage in them. And you all know the downward trend that can occur when a person does not deal with a tempting thought. Well, then that doubt turns into a stronghold of unbelief. And they just don't believe anything. They just don't believe anything. And then they just commit apostasy. They just walk away. See that downward trend? Well, the thing that a generational curse does is it locks in these areas of tempting thought. So they become the primary atmosphere at a home. And the temptation, if it's not stopped, will become a stronghold. And then when the generational curse kicks in, we have got potential tragedies. You say, well, how could a person ever murder somebody? It's by having a resentful thought that they don't deal with. I just really resent that girl over there that's got that yellow dress on. Man, I can't stand that. And then all of a sudden, you just don't like anybody wearing a dress at all. And then you don't like anybody that reminds you of anybody that looks like that. And then you hate all kinds of people. And then the day comes when you are at a bad place in your life and you're angry, and all of a sudden you just pop somebody. Then you're there in prison wondering, how did I ever get here? Well, there's so many things that we could teach on this. There are many people who do not believe that curses exist today. Well, in 1988, as I was preparing to preach a Father's Day message at Good News Church in Fort Lauderdale, Brother Derek's church, God spoke to my heart and said, preach on the consequences of committing adultery. I said, God, please, this is a nice day. This is a day when people want to come, they want to bring their dads, their granddad, but I knew God had spoken to me by word of wisdom. And I studied the consequences of committing adultery. And I had grown up reading the book of Proverbs. The proverb of the day, keeps the devil away. It's kind of like been my attitude. And I read Proverbs 2 for years, Proverbs 5, Proverbs 7. And I saw all the prohibitions against adultery, but I went back and I looked at it in the sense of the damages that it caused. If you want to dissect a particular generational curse and how it works, simply study the consequences of committing adultery. I'll just show you a couple. And if you study this outline for yourself, you will learn for your own life to study particular themes and to see biblically how these generational curses really work out. But if you'll just go to Proverbs 2 for a moment. Proverbs 2, we'll read just a couple of these 25 consequences. And once you see them, you think these really do fit into the context of the working out of curses. It says in Genesis, in Proverbs chapter 2 and verse 16, we want to deliver you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters her words, who forsakes the companion of her youth, forgets the covenant of her God. Verse 18, the adulterous house leads down to death, and her paths go to the dead. None who go to the house of the adulteress return. They never regain the paths of life. Think about those verses that tell you what will happen to who? To you when you commit adultery. You leave your closest friend. You betray the one. And the Hebrew, when it talks about the companion of her youth, is really a picture of someone that you walk together with. It's like your consort, your companion, and you've left that person. You can't tell me that you'll ever have the same regard for that woman when you have gone to someone else's bedroom. You've left the companion of your youth. You've ignored and forsaken your covenant with God. God was the one that you covenanted to stay faithful to that woman to. But the 18th verse simply says, you've invited death into your life. As a matter of fact, you just bought a one-way ticket to death, because it says no one that comes back to her returns. I've been in ministry a long time, and I have dealt many times with the wreckage that's come from adultery, and I see how clearly you can picture this in terms of a generational curse. The things that happen. You are uprooted from your family and your inheritance in the 22nd verse. When you study all these things, Proverbs 5 verse 4 says that when you commit adultery, the end of that life will be bitter. You commit adultery, you have just taken a bitter pill, because life is going to be bitter and it's going to be painful. It says that you will be pierced with a sword. When you study the potential outworkings of a curse that comes from committing adultery, and then you compare it with people's experiences, the Bible is literally accurate in every realm. You can get these notes later. You can email me if you're in a training session and seeing this video, and I'll mail these things to you. The one that I think is the most interesting is chapter 6, verse 27, which says this, can a man take fire into his bosom, and his clothes not be burned? Can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be seared? So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her shall not be innocent. I don't know about you, I enjoy barbecuing, but I do not enjoy being barbecued. And I would not want to pour hot coals down my shirt and destroy this part of my life. Well, you know what happens when you commit adultery? You are destroyed in the area of the heart. You are seared in this area of your life. And everything that the Scripture says in these 25 things will come to pass for you.